Good evening, everybody. It's John here from Tutor to You, welcoming you along to another of our A-Level Geography live streams. It's half term. I hope you're having a little bit of rest and recuperation alongside a bit of revision for your exams. Tonight, we are going to be concentrating on the option element of paper 2 and thinking particularly about population and the environment. As always with these live streams, we have a PowerPoint presentation which will be available for you to download as soon as the live stream finishes. And of course, this is all being recorded, so you can always watch it again. I'm joined tonight by Alice in the middle of the screen and Brendan on the right-hand side of the screen. Good evening, both.
Evening.
Good evening, John. Good to see you.
Good to see you and good to see everybody who's joining us. Just having a look down at my little clock here to tell me we've got lots of people ready and willing and hopefully going to answer some of your questions using the chat window. Alice, do you want to give us a quick run through of what we're going to be doing tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. Given how close we are to our next week's paper 2 exam, we're going to do some exam practice, quick overview of the paper so we know which section we're answering, and I think we're going to have a few games as well, sort of, so you know what that you're remembering all the key terms clearly.
Wonderful, wonderful. So let's get started, shall we?
Well, we're going to start with the bubble quiz. So in case you haven't seen how the bubble quiz works, there are 4 possible answers. All 4 could be correct, or all 4 could be incorrect, or any number of them could be correct. So none of them correct, 1, 2, 3, or 4 of them. So the first question is, which of these are physical factors which can affect population distribution? Which of these are physical factors which can affect population distribution? Read the question carefully and give us your answers. So you're either writing none, or A, or B, or C, could be one of them, or any combination. Off you go. So we're getting some answers coming through already. You can just quickly tap them let's have a look at the correct answer for this one. So A, C, and D are correct. Quite a few people getting that right. Well done, guys. Okay, number 2. Which of the following affect how successful agriculture on a specific soil may be? Let's read that again. Which of the following affect how successful agriculture on a specific soil may be? How many, if any, of those answers are correct? Let's see what answers we've got coming in. Okay, let's have a look at the correct answers for that one. So, in fact, it's all 4 of them are correct. All of 4 of them apply to that question. Well done if you got those right. Question number 3. Which of the following relate to relief of land, another key factor affecting agricultural potential of an area? Which of the following 4 things, if any, relate to the relief of land, another key factor affecting the agricultural potential of an area? Let's see what your answers are for that one. So, relate to the relief of land. You need to know what relief is for that one, obviously. Let's have a look at the answers for that one. The correct answers are B, C, and D. Aspect, of course, is the way the land is facing. Could be facing the sun or facing away from the sun, could be north or south facing, etc. But that's due to the relief. And latitude, of course, is not anything to do with that. That's to do with the number of degrees you are north or south of the equator. Let's have a look at question number 4. Question number 4, identify the human factors that can lead to population change. Once again, read the question carefully. Identify the human factors that can lead to population change. Jot down your answers. Could be none of them, or 1, 2, 3, or all 4 of them. What do you think? Let's have a look at some of these answers that are coming through. Let's have a look at the answer, or answers. It's all 4. So if you said A, B, C, D, well done. So all 4 of those apply. All of 4 of those are human factors leading to population change. And the 5th question in the bubble quiz, which of these health conditions may be the result of climate change? Which of these health conditions may be the result of climate change? Which of these answers, if any, are correct? Let's see what you're thinking about that one. And as it says at the bottom, the number of answers that are correct can range from 0 to all 4. So quickly put down your responses. And we have one at least good answer, which is, let's see the answers, all of them again. So every single one of those could be the result of climate change. And in fact, according to a study in 2019, by the year 2050, disease-carrying mosquitoes will ultimately reach 500 million more people than they do today, which is quite a disturbing fact. Okay, over to you, Alice.
Thank you, Brendan. That's a really nice sort of overview of the sort of issues and aspects of geography we're looking at with this topic. Just wanted to pop up a couple of slides to remind you of the overview of the paper, but clearly we've all done paper 1, so we can be relatively quickly through this. We all study global systems and global governance, and we all study changing places. So each of those 36 marks are compulsory. You must answer all of those questions. But when we come to section C, thank you, there are 3 optional topics there. So it's contemporary urban environments, population and the environment, or resource security. And it tends to be in that order on the paper. So you're looking for population and the environment within section C. And these are the questions we're going to face, which are, of course, the knowledge recall 4 markers, followed by the skills 6-mark question, and we're going to talk about that in some detail, but the commands tend to be analyze the data or perhaps evaluate the usefulness of these figures for understanding something on the way they've been presented, perhaps. And then we don't have another 6-mark, we have 2 9-mark questions. And these are likely to be framed as using figure X and your own knowledge. Please do this, that, and the other. Clearly, you've got to use the figure, reference the figure, but also bring in your own understanding of the topic. Commands there are likely to be evaluate or assess. 9-mark question that could be slightly different. It could be a synoptic question getting you to link or compare 2 topics of this paper, or potentially something on that physical paper, a sub-theme, a subtopic of the physical geography that they might bring in to link to one of the paper 2 topics. So have a think about that. And then, of course, the 20-mark question. Remember, there's an all-important conclusion which you must make time for. Now, if we look at the 48 marks for this topic, clearly you need to spend a little bit more time on section C. So you might be looking to spend an hour on section C and 45 minutes on the global systems and global governance, and then 45 minutes on changing places. Okay, so that's the overview. Oh, what's that siren? What's that siren, Brendan? Brendan, have you got your mute on?
Brendan,
Hello, I'm here. I am here.
Aha. Do you want to tell us about these examples we need to know about?
I think if you do that, and I'll do the next one, if that's
fine,
okay.
fine, yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So just a reminder here that what we are required to know about are 2 different climates and how that affects human activities, but also, and probably your case studies or mini case studies are linked together, 2 key zonal soils. So here we've got the idea of the hot desert climate in the Nile Valley and aridosols, and we've got the tropical climate of the Amazon basin and the latisols. So we're thinking about both soils and climate and thinking about how they influence human activities. Okay, over to you.
Thanks, Alice. Okay, so bouncing off that, we have the red herring activity. You're going to see 4 items, and one of them is the odd one out. So this requires a little bit more thought than we've so far. So we're building up your thinking capacity. So in the first question, the red herrings are A, B, C, and D. You can see there which of those 4 items is the odd one out. So in this case, it's always going to be one of them that's the odd one out. So we've got heavy convectional rainfall, warm temperatures, average of 27 degrees Celsius, large diurnal range in temperature, and no dry season. Which of those 4 items is the odd one out, and why? And why? So if you can jot down your thoughts on that, just choose which letter and briefly say why. That would be interesting to see. And okay, you just have to put a brief reason why. Let's have a look at the answer to the first one. The first one is large diurnal range in temperature, which would be more typical of a climate other than the other 3, which are all linked to tropical rainforest climate. So hopefully you were thinking along the right lines there. Let's have a look at question number 2. Question number 2, same thing as before. One of these is the odd one out. So A, B, C, and D. So the A is precipitation of 25 to 200 millimeters per year. B is large diurnal range in temperature. C is average highs of 35 degrees Celsius and above. D, very humid. Which of those is the odd one out, and why? So if you jot down your answers in the chat if you want to, let's have a look at the answer. The answer is very humid is the odd one out, because the others are all linked to a hot desert climate. Very humid would be more typical of a rainforest climate. Good stuff, and well done to those of you who got that right. I see Polly got that right, well done. Okay, number 3. This one, we have A, B, C, and D. One of these is the odd one out. A lack humus, B, no distinct horizons, C, red or yellowish red in colour, D, 20 to 30 metres deep. Read those carefully. Have a think which one of these is going to be the odd one out. This is question 3. One of them is the odd one out. Okay, looking to see what we've got here, to see if we've got the right answer. I'm not sure if we have. Let's have a look at the correct answer to this one. It's A, lack humus, because the other 3 are all to do with lattice soils. They're all features of lattice soils. Okay, number 4. Number 4, A, dark staining from downwashed humus, B, 80 to 90 centimeters deep, C, surface layer has low organic matter, and D, water deficient. So which one of those is the odd one out? And one of them is definitely the odd one out. Which one is it? Let's have a look and see. In this case, it's A, dark staining from downwashed humus. And that's because, in fact, surface is often light in colour, permeable and porous with poor moisture retention. Let's move on to question 5. Last one of this little sequence here. So we're looking at what the odd one is out of these 4 items. A, irrigation, B, saturation, C, structural deterioration, D, wind erosion. Let's see what you think about that. What do you think is the odd one out? And if you can, say why. Okay, you've had a good answer there. Let's have a look and see what the correct answer is, which is in agreement with that, which is irrigation, because the other 3 answers are what we call soil problems. Okay, over to you, Alice, for some exam practice.
Thank you, Brendan. So just picking up on some of those questions about soils, I thought we'd have a look at a possible 20-mark question about soils. So you really need to know your soils examples for this. The question is, soil is a key factor that determines the success of human activity across the globe today. So that's kind of an opinion, a statement, an idea. With reference to 2 zonal soils you have studied, to what extent do you agree with this view? Okay, so the first thing when you come to a 20-mark question is to give yourself a bit of thinking time. And if we look at the command is to what extent do you agree with this view? So this is a phrase we need to respond to and perhaps refer to, come back to in our conclusion. To a major extent, I agree. To a minor extent, to a lesser extent, you're going to use those sorts of phrases. So that's the command. What's the next part of this we need to focus on? Well, we need to go back to the view that we've been given and try and understand what the key elements of it are. Soil is the key factor. So it's not just a factor, it's kind of the most important factor in the success of human activity across the globe today. So we've got to look at things from a global scale potentially, and we've got to think about the importance of this particular factor. And then lastly, how are we going to go about answering it? Well, we've got to bring in our examples. So with reference to the 2 zonal soils you have studied. So I've got to go back to those and kind of focus on those soils and how they are actually going to affect areas of human activity and how successful they are. Right, okay, so we know what the question's about. We can start planning this. Give yourself 2 to 3 minutes planning time before you start writing. Now remember, if we look at the mark scheme for this, if you like, it's split into 2 sections. No, absolutely, that's the slide I want. So thank you. So you've got 10 marks for what we might loosely call knowledge recall, facts and figures, okay? 10 marks, and that's just for the AO1 part of this, what you can remember, that your knowledge about this topic. So these are the sorts of things you might be looking to express in terms of your knowledge of this topic, quickly linking soils to the success of agriculture, perhaps, also linking it to population density, but also thinking about other factors such as climate and climate change, topography, obviously that's tied in with soils as well, so is drainage, but then potentially bringing in some human factors as well. So when we look at what we need for the AO2 element, that's the second 10 marks, which I'm calling thinking on your feet, and so does the examiner. It's about applying your knowledge to the context of the question. Okay, so you're thinking quite quickly about the factors that determine human activities, perhaps which ones are more linked to soil type or determined by soil type. There might be sort of a backwards and forwards relationship there. Thinking about other factors that influence human activities, perhaps demand, perhaps climate change, and then thinking all the way at trying to analyze all the way through. So if you're aiming at 4 paragraphs, you need to bring in that analytical comment, and you need to bring in your counter arguments. Really important. So when you come onto your conclusion, you can be very clear about what you think is the relative importance of the soils, particularly in the areas that have these zonal soils, but you're basing your conclusion on the evidence you're presented. So don't change your mind at the last minute. You have to conclude based on your earlier paragraphs. And as I say, save some time for that conclusion because the examiner has reserved some marks for it. Okay, I think, Brendan, you're going to talk us through a different aspect of the topic, and we've got to look for some groups. Is that right?
Yeah, thanks, Alice. So we're looking here at the connection wall, which has some resemblance to a quite well-known activity on one of the quiz shows on television, but this is very slightly different. So if we could have a look at well, I'll just explain how it works first. You've got 3 groups of 4 in a grid, which you're going to see in a minute. You've got a quick glimpse of it there, and your job is to kind of work out what the connections are, or to identify which are the 3 groups of 4. We'll do them one at a time, and also tell us the connection. So the 12 items are here. Let's take a moment to see if you can work out what one of the groups, or 2 of the groups, or all 3 of the groups are. So off you go. Have a little think about these now. We've got 12 items. I'll just read them out for you. Housing quality, high lifetime burden, insecticides, air quality, MDG met by 2015, that's Millennium Development Goal, narrowing the airways, lifestyle, employment type, increasing in low-income countries and middle-income countries, low fatality rate, I beg your pardon, mosquito nets, and drug treatment acts. So let's see if anyone's worked out what any of those groups might be. Remember, there's 3 groups of 4. Okay, let's have a look at the first group. So 4 of these items are linked with malaria. That's insecticides, the MDG to be met by 2015, mosquito nets, and ACTS drug treatment. So the ACTS drug treatment it's just as well we have an acronym for that, because it's artemisinin-based combination therapy, which is quite a mouthful. So I'm sure it'd be fine to use that in an exam if you're referring to that. Another group, has anyone got another group? Let's see, is asthma. So that would be the 4 things in common for asthma would be high lifetime burden, narrowing of the airways, low fatality rate, increasing in LICs and MICs, which leaves the final group, which you can see, they will change colour any moment now. And the other remaining 4 are all non-communicable diseases. So housing quality, lifestyle, employment type, and air quality. So, that would be people getting disease from, say, air pollution. Okay, let's move on to the next activity. We have an example. So here's an example of a biologically transmitted disease, for example, malaria.
Great, thank you, Brendan. So yes, we've got two examples, not so much Siren with this one. We've got two examples that we need to know when it comes to diseases. The first is a biologically transmitted disease, and the exam board actually gives the example of malaria. So I'm thinking most of us have studied that. Now, what do we need to know about it? We need to know about the impact on humans. We need to know about the distribution of it at a global scale. And we also need to think about kind of causes and consequences, particularly in terms of causes. We're thinking about environmental variables such as drainage. So for our second disease, we need to know about a non-communicable disease. Lots of people might have studied asthma. Other people might have done a form of heart disease and know quite a lot about that. And again, we're thinking about impacts, causes and consequences. And then, as with the last one, sort of strategies to manage and mitigate these diseases at a global scale. Okay. Oh, sorry. Over to you,
That's
Brendan.
all right. Many thanks. So we've got a very short activity here called the lineup, and you'll see that there are four possible answers: A, chi-squared test; B, standard deviation; C, interquartile range; or D, Spearman's rank. You're going to see four characteristics of one of those things, and your task is just to decide which of those four, A, B, C, or D, is being described. So we've got one of them, which is it's a statistical test, whichever the answer is. The second characteristic is that it examines the degree to which two data sets are related, if at all. The degree to which two data sets are related, if at all. The third characteristic is that it establishes if correlation is statistically significant. And the fourth characteristic is that the coefficient or result R could be any value between -1 and +1. So take a moment to read through those characteristics and try and decide which of the four, A, B, C, or D, is being described by numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm seeing several correct answers coming through. Let's reveal what the correct answer is. Well done. Several of you, who, in fact, possibly all of you, said it was Spearman's rank. So well done if you recognise that. So a good way to revise is to perhaps have a look at the other three things. Would you be able to write the characteristics of the other three and recognise those? So moving on.
Great, thanks, Brendan. That's a really good suggestion for an idea. If you watching on catch up, you can pause the video and jot some ideas down about how you would describe those other three. Yeah, absolutely. For paper 2, remember your calculators. There could well be another bit of maths, a statistical test, or some statistics for us to work through. All right, so now this graph I understand is probably not very clear if you're watching on a phone. You might need to download the slide pack afterwards, or even watch this again, dare I say, on a bigger device. But the idea is to present you with a scatter plot or a scatter graph here, which is the starting point perhaps for an analysis that leads you on to a Spearman's rank. So we've got this scatter plot, we've got two variables. On the x-axis, we've got child mortality. On the y, we've got children per woman. And what we've done is plotted lots of, or rather what our World in Data have done is plotted lots of different country data there, and they've got an added complication because they've gone for a different size of circle depending on the size of the population. But what you might do with this first of all is try and spot the anomalies, and then you would draw a line of best fit. After that, you might go on to that Spearman's rank test. But let's have a look at what possible questions we could get if we'd just given the figure and not the Spearman's rank. Okay, so the first question we might come across is analyse the data presented in figure 1 for 6 marks. This would be your 6-mark question on population and the environment, and it's the skills question. So have a look at that question. I believe we've got a minute, is that right, John? Just to see what we can jot down about this. What can we spot from this? Imagine you're perhaps describing it to a friend over the phone. Okay, so let's have a look at what we had for this, John. So I've said that we're thinking about the correlation. It would be really worth stating here on a basic level that we're looking at a positive correlation. A positive correlation between these two variables with some anomalies, and some of you in the chat have spotted them. We've got Niger, Pakistan and Haiti. Pakistan and Haiti have got a higher child mortality than perhaps we'd expect. We can see clusters of countries, which are the dots located on the scatter graph, where children per woman is less than 2, and also child mortality is less than 1.8%. And we might say on close examination, which I appreciate you haven't had time to do, a larger spread of African countries, particularly in terms of child mortality, than within other continents, because we've got that colour key as well going on. There's a lot going on within that figure. My advice for this sort of question is you're describing the data, you're not explaining it. So I saw people sort of dropping into looking at sort of imagining the population pyramid and thinking about things like whether countries have been through the demographic transition, which would not unfortunately be worth marks for this style of question. Okay, the exam board is really just looking for us to kind of imagine the data alone without any other knowledge and kind of think about describing it using your key techniques, like looking for the trends, the anomalies, using a little bit of maths, some data manipulation, and thinking about links between data sets. And that idea, I'm sure your teacher have given you an acronym for that. I quite like the TESLA acronym, which is trend backed up with some evidence, looking for links between data sets, sums for the maths bit. Just to remind yourself you need to do some data manipulation to get full marks on these sort of questions, and looking for the anomalies. Okay, so that's that sort of question, but now we're seeing a different style of skills question, aren't we? What if we had to assess the usefulness? So let's have a look at the question. Okay, so same figure, but the question this time is assess the usefulness of figure 1 in presenting the relationship between child morbidity and children per woman. Okay, so again, we're not looking for you to explain why that might be the case, although I'm sure as good geographers, and we've seen that in the chat, you would be able to do that. But it's really just talking about the presentation style they've used here, and think about whether it's the right way to present the data to really promote our understanding of that relationship. So we're going to give you a minute. Okay, and thank you for some really good answers in the chat there. There's people talking about circles that overlap, so that's really hard to read. We've got ideas about it's perhaps difficult to distinguish between countries that are in a cluster. Some people talking about the colour being useful. So there's some good ideas here. And Ethan, I would say, well done for coming up with something in terms of the positives of this presentation style. Don't start with character assassinating the figure, but actually make sure you come up with some positive points about why it really works. So, for example, the colours per continent gives us a sense of where these things are within across the world. If you're a policymaker and you wanted to address these problems, we could argue that the size of the circles makes it really ideal in terms of understanding the scale of different problems associated with this data. But also we've got some critiques in terms of how clustered some of it is, and it's difficult to read. We might also say that perhaps we can't really without a best fit line and perhaps a Spearman's rank correlation coefficient and an idea about how significant it is. We can't fully understand the data. So make sure you're getting a balance of what's good about it, but also kind of problems with understanding this data given how it's been presented. So those are just sort of jotting down some of our ideas about this, talking about the colour and the size of dots, but really important to talk about things that are helpful rather than just critiquing it. Okay, now we just have a different figure question for you here on this population environment topic. Turn the page and you find there's a photograph. Okay, so I'll just read the title of the photograph perhaps, and I've spotted there's another figure coming up, but first of all, I might think about what I can jot down around that photograph. What can I see in the image? Just very quickly. Remember, this colour insert is yours in the exam. You can write around it. You can ring certain bits of the photograph. So what did I do when I looked at this photograph? Okay, so we've got some rings there, and I believe we've got some labels there. Is that right, John? Yeah. Okay. So we've spotted just within that photograph about open burning of paddy fields in Malaysia. We can see there are people in the fields next to the fires, next to this associated smog, which is slightly concerning. And then behind that, we can see the apartments, and we're concerned about perhaps the particulate matter that is going to reach local residents. But we've also got a second figure, so we've got figure A and figure B. B is, of course, a text figure, just describing a little bit, giving us a bit more background as to what's going on. And I'm going to sort of skip reading that up front because I'm going to have a look at the question. Okay, so the question is about using both figures and our own knowledge. So clearly this is a sort of question you can talk about causes and consequences. How far do you agree that air quality is having a greater impact on human health in the 21st century? So we've got that question there, and we need to perhaps go through bugging or boxing the command word, etc., before we really have another look at that text figure as well as the photograph and think about what am I going to pick out of those figures, but also how can I relate this to what I know. Yeah, so we just think about what's the command with this question to start with. So it's a 9-mark question. How far do you agree? So that's the command. I'm going to come back to that very briefly in a statement at the end to talk about I largely agree, I agree to a lesser extent, that sort of thing. Okay, this question's about air quality, clearly, and I might need to just underline that idea that it's having a greater impact in the 21st century. So within the last 2.5 years, is this having a larger impact on human health, or is it less of a problem? And then what am I going to use? I'm going to use figures A and B and my own knowledge to sort this out, okay? So it's really just thinking about that. I don't know whether we've got some exam gold for this question, John. Yeah. So thinking out with these 9-mark questions, and I'm not going to give you a full answer to that, but maybe pause the video later on and have a think about that question. You know, would you be talking about, well, I think what's happening in Asia compared to what's happening in Europe is different, okay, because they're looking for you to bring in other ideas, perhaps a second context. But for these 9-mark questions, unpick the question before engaging with the figures. That's my suggestion. Skip an intro for your 9-mark questions. Okay, once you've taken perhaps a minute to plan your answer, you don't have time for an introduction and it's not required by the examiner. Use the figures or figure as a springboard. You need to refer to it, but also go beyond it. So start talking about something that isn't evident in those figures. But you must include a conclusion. It's only a statement for a 9-marker. Okay, so think about the wording of the question. Make sure you're directly answering that, obviously, but you've planned it anyway, so I'm sure you are. Okay, so I've got some a true-false activity here, which Brendan is going to take us through.
Thanks, Alice. And I might add that some of the responses there were really excellent to that previous section. Really, really good. Lots of very good thinking going on. So here are some true or false questions for you. So here's a statement. You have to decide whether it's true or false. And the statement is, underpopulation is when a population is that should say is, there's a missing is there. Underpopulation is when a population is too small to fully utilize the resources available to it. Is that true or false? So you can just type T or F. See if anybody's getting the correct answers there. Lots of correct answers, and the correct answer is, of course, true. This is true because underpopulation is when a population is indeed too small to fully utilize the resources available to it. Let's have a look at the next statement that could be true or false. True or false? There are many examples of an optimum population around the world. Is that true or false? Put your answer in the chat if you don't mind. Let's have a look and see what we've got for that one. Anybody suggesting the correct answer for that one? Because the correct answer is false. There are not very many examples of optimum population around the world. And the final statement, a bit more thought to this one perhaps. The population, resources and pollution model, it's also known as the PRP model. The population, resources and pollution model states that extraction and exploitation of natural resources alter the growth of a population in a positive way. To reread that again, there's a little bit more to read. Is that true or is it false? Let's see what people are saying for that. And we're getting lots of correct thoughts on that, which is good. Do you know why? It is false. It's correct to say that that's false because the model describes the positive and negative feedback loops between population, resources and pollution. And if you want to try and apply that, go back and have a look at the Penang photo we were looking at a few minutes ago with Alice and think about how the PRP model could be applied in that situation. Okay. And the next we're going to have a look at is, a bit of a siren going off for that one because this is a population structure diagram, otherwise known as population pyramid. It says it's for Japan, a country experiencing specific patterns of population change. This is quite a well-known population structure diagram or population pyramid. Hopefully you can comprehend it. Over to you, Alice.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so we just need to remind ourselves we've got these two kind of, we might say, bigger case studies that the exam board would like you to know about. You may well not be doing Japan. You might be doing, for example, Thailand or other countries. But we can see from that population pyramid that something's going on. It's a little bit top heavy. And let's have a look at the sort of question we might get for this case study. So the question is a 9 marker again. Assess the extent to which a country experiencing population change that you've studied has experienced a demographic dividend. Demographic dividend. Now, of course, for this, you do need to know what demographic dividend means. And I think our next slide is going to help us with this. And it's also going to demonstrate or remind you that you do need a counter argument. Okay, so it might be your penultimate paragraph, but you do need a counter argument as well as kind of some agreement with the question, depending on where your views are. But you need to reflect differing arguments. So I don't know whether this person's talking about China rather than Japan, but let's have a look at how they start their answer. The demographic dividend is a period of time when economies with a declining birth rate have a smaller percentage of young or younger dependents, more of working age, and few elderly dependents. Investment can lead to rapid economic growth, for example, in China from 1980 onwards. So they've helped to define that key term in the question, which is their understanding of perhaps some sort of economic boom at the point in time where perhaps there has been a high birth rate and then it becomes less less high. And then you've also got the idea that people are living longer, and the combination, so child mortality falls, and the combination of those means you get a large population moving into that working age bracket. And for the time when they're in that working age bracket, hopefully 30, 40 years, then you can really improve the economy and have that economic boost. So what might we be giving as a counter argument? So we've explained what the key term is. We backed it with an example. Perhaps this question is going to be all about China. Can you think of a counter argument or one even specific to China? Okay, so I'm just keeping an eye on the chat. There's a lot to think about there, isn't it? But think about, in short form, what's the problem with that demographic dividend? Okay, so we've got ideas like Japan is moving away from the demographic dividend. Yeah, maybe this is making most sense for that if that's your case study. Let's have a look at our counter argument. Okay, so there's a little devil there going to tell us the opposite's true. As shown by Japan, so this comes on to perhaps using our own case study, this is a short-term window. Japan entered a period of demographic dividend in 1955, and by contrast, reached the point of demographic burden around 1995. So that's the idea that Japan is actually having to support lots and lots of elderly dependents and has a low birth rate. And then we've returned to our country that we study, that we really want to focus on and show our knowledge of. China's median age was higher than that of the US population in 2020. So hinting that perhaps China has reached that point where it's actually kind of in parallel with Japan. It's going to see its economy shrinking because it hasn't got the working age population coming through. And maybe that's not right now, but maybe it might be the case in 10, 20 years. Okay, and yeah, just a reminder that in particular for your 20-mark questions, they should be supported with real-world examples throughout. Okay, don't just name drop or tag examples onto the end of paragraphs. This specific question we were looking at, which actually was a 9-marker, requires use of a case study, and it may be as that specific, but other questions will involve using a range of examples. Okay, and then we've got, I think, our final practice question here. Evaluate the concept of the epidemiological transition. So evaluate the concept. Here, not really specifying 1, 2, 3 case studies. What examples are you going to bring in? But it's a 9-marker with evaluate as a command, and the key focus is the concept of the epidemiological transition. What have we got in the way of answers? I think we've got another devil's advocate activity. So starts off with the idea that, well, they're defining, aren't they, epidemiological transition. So stating that as a result of that transition from communicable to non-communicable diseases, we have life expectancy increasing, and we might have examples to back that. But can we come up with a however? Well, Kat, if you haven't revised this, then you maybe need to take a look. Yeah, so Debbie, we've got just developing this kind of idea of thinking about what the epidemiological transition involves. Are you allowed to draw diagrams? I would say yes, you could draw some diagrams, little sketches, but make sure you label them, and perhaps see, if you jot down C diagram, that makes it really clear. Okay, let's have a look at our however. I've got UMs, however, which is great. Here we've got lifestyle diseases such as diabetes are on the increase amongst older age groups in EME. So yeah, I think as some of you noted, the angel was talking about things that definitely happen as countries grow and the economy grows. But then we've got a little bit of a counter argument here saying, well, actually, you look at India and the rates of type 2 diabetes, which are really high in urban areas, maybe this transition is not releasing us all from the burden of disease, is it? It's not necessarily going to be linked to really high life expectancy in all countries. So well done having a go at that one. That's a bit of a tricky one, but just a reminder of that need for a counter argument. And then quietly, John has provided us with a slide to remind us that there is a second case study, and this one is at a local scale. So I know some of you might have studied Dharavi in Mumbai. Perhaps, in fact, you've done the local area where you live, and you've looked at the relationship between place and health. So this one could come up in some form, might be tested with a 9-mark question or maybe a 20-mark question. So if you haven't looked at that, make sure you do. Okay, so not much remains for me to be said other than we've had a go at capturing some of the aspects of this topic, but remember it's a larger one, so do give it that little bit of extra time, both in your revision and also in the exam itself. You can use the QR code on the screen now to access all of these paper 2 multi-choice quiz questions that we've got on the Tutor 2 website.
Brilliant stuff and fantastic stuff in terms of the contribution from students tonight. Please let me give a very, very quick shout out to people. Apologies if I didn't have time to catch your name here, but I've got Lily, Polly, Anna, Ethan, Flora, Izzy, Phoebe, Vicky, Roxy, Molly, Alex, UM, Kira, Josh, Susie, Kate, Chili, Charlie, M, Existential Crisis, which probably sums us all up at the moment, Melanie, Ottie, stay calm, Debbie, Daniel and Brendan HT, great name to finish with, I think. Well done to all of you for taking part. And again, big apologies if I didn't mention you there. Please do give us a thumbs up, though, if you have found tonight useful. That helps us get our message out there. A quick reminder, we've mentioned it as the presentation's been going on tonight. The PowerPoint that we've been using will be available for you to download pretty much as soon as this live stream finishes, as well as the ability to re-watch this video. Alice, we've got one more of these live streams to go, though. Am I right?
You are right. It's actually for one of the other options.
Okay.
So if people are doing population, they won't be doing the urban topic. But yes, we're doing this all over again on Thursday evening. So Thursday, the 1st of June, 6:30, same place. But it is going to be the urban topic. So most people on this call won't need it. But pass the word out to friends.
Pass the word on. Absolutely. Pass the word on to anybody you know who's doing the other options. Brilliant stuff. Thanks to Alice. Thanks to Brendan. Wonderful presentation as always. Thank you again to everybody who's been involved. And we hope to see you again very soon. And if we don't, the very best of luck with your exams. Goodbye, everybody.
Best
Good
of luck,
everyone. Bye.